time doing it off the Mac, and I'm still definitely not got to grips with it properly. Yeah, so I'm doing this as a first test thing, but also I'm pissed. I'm not going to lie. There's something that's really, really, really bothering me. As you all know, I went down to have my Mac lesson, to Brian's. Whilst I was at Brian's, obviously I got to, I got to see more stuff, and I got to know a little bit more about what's gone on. And I am astounded at the behaviour of the police, the family courts, solicitors. Yeah, because there's a side to Brian's story that Brian doesn't talk about. It doesn't that Now I've looked at just a fraction of the evidence, because Brian went to prison for 56 days. Yeah, a man who's never committed a crime. He's paid millions in taxes. He's never committed a crime. He's not a criminal in any way, shape or form. Yeah, he was in a band. It could be anybody's son, anybody's nephew. And he's paid his taxes. He's been an upstanding member of the community. No criminal record, no violence, no nothing. Yeah, and the blatant disregard for his basic rights, as it's no less, like, for me, it's bothering me. And it all starts with the family court. Now, I don't think, and most people that like watch me or are watching the material and that I put out will know that the family courts are very well known for being very corrupted. Yeah, they take people's children willy-nilly at the say-so of people like Mike G, Camilla Batman Jelly's mentor, who's an expert witness for the family courts, mainly in London, which then goes to the court that Brian ended up at. Now, a lot of people don't know this. Yeah, and when I say his life's been desecrated in every, it's just unbelievable. But what is really unbelievable is the actions of the CPS. Yeah, and the CPS are the people who decide whether there is enough evidence to pursue a crime, especially enough evidence to put somebody in prison. Yeah. Now, this sentence originated from a family court judge, and they was basically saying that Brian can't go near his wife, his now ex-wife Tasha, who, by the way, people, was one of his dancers, was in the industry, was her Anton Watkins, and has freely gone along with all of this, which is, and the upshot of it is Brian missed out on being a father to his daughter. Yeah, Brian missed out on having his child because the people involved in this decided that they could do it, and it's no short of there's definitely false paperwork gone on, but let me get family court. Sorry, he was given this injunction, but attached to this injunction, the judge attached this injunction to a prison sentence. And the injunction, and what I will say is probably maybe tomorrow night, because everything I talk about tonight, yeah, is backed up with evidence, paperwork. I just haven't, like Brian was trying to show me earlier on, but I haven't managed to grasp pulling the documents in. But it'll help me. But you will see, I just want to put this out there, yeah, to let people digest the seriousness of what we're dealing with, yeah? And it's all backed. It's no hearsay, no theories. This is all backed up with paperwork. The most ridiculous, it's beyond. But I just want to lay out the groundwork for this. And a family court judge decided that he'd seen enough evidence to attach a prison sentence to this injunction. And the evidence that he said that it was provided by the News of the World. Stories saying that he eyed it, man, and whatever. But this judge, based on, obviously, what he read in the media, because he actually said that, placed a 56-day imprisonment attached to the injunction. Now, I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty certain that family court judges cannot issue a sentence that carries a 56-day term. Should be a suspended sentence that has been given by a criminal judge. They sentence them to a certain amount of time, and then they say, right, if 6 months imprisonment, if you commit offence within sort of like that say 12 months, which is what they'll put that, you know, it only have a certain amount of time, that sentence gets suspended. But if you get arrested for anything within the time that it's like, you will do the original 6 months and whatever is put on top. Now, that's a standard thing in a criminal court of law. I'm not too sure that a family judge, if he has got them powers, should have them powers. Yeah? Because no, they're meant to make decisions based on the family. Yeah, they can tell someone that they're having their child taken away. Yeah, but to actually hand out a prison sentence attached to an injunction that basically says you must not contact or try to contact, which is standard procedure. You know, the injunction I'm not surprised about. The prison sentence has shocked me, because Brian ended up doing that prison sentence and then getting a not guilty. So, in effect, you have a family court judge, and as far as I am aware, the family courts are not criminal courts. So, you know, I don't know if they've been given new powers, and I would appreciate if anybody does know if the family court have these powers, when were they granted, and what is the vetting process? You know, you because. And the other stipulation, in the injunction was you must not get anybody else to basically get someone to do something to Tasha. Basically, they call it interfering with witnesses, but they didn't use that terminology. And then gets put in process an absolute. Well, it's like, it's beyond, because then enters the hitman, Kemal Zorba. And Kemal Zorba is basically the hitman who their words, not mine. The newsies were front page, a hitman hires a hitman. And he hired this hitman with half a gram of this is according to the papers, because this is all down to them. They've recorded this. There's no police involvement at this time, and this is all set up by the News of the World. Now, nothing surprises me with the media. It's, you know, but the fact is, it was an absolute setup. And this is where things start getting really dark, because the person who introduced Brian to Zorba is his friend Reese. Reese is dead now. But there is a transcript of a conversation between Reese and Zorba. And in it, Reese is like, have you planned anything yet? And Zorba, and these are transcribed police transcripts, so it's not hearsay. And the conversation goes, have you planned anything yet? And Zorba is like, no, I'm waiting for my friend John to come back. Basically, this guy John has got the flat where, and when they say hitman, it doesn't mean to say that they was going to kill Tasha. No. They was going to, like, the whole shebang was meant, Brian was literally entrapped and an idea put to him, which, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it, it excuses, but the bottom line is Brian loves his daughter and he wanted to see his daughter. And he was at a position where he hadn't seen his daughter, So basically, this Zorba is basically saying he's gonna get Tasha on it, and then take a photograph of her snorting cocaine. You know what they done to Kerry Katona? That kind of scenario, which it wasn't, because when someone's desperate, and I'm going to say this, to say, and never mind that Tasha's dirty little cokehead who was one of their dancers anyway. So it's you can see how desperate. But this Zorba put the idea in Brian's head. There's transcripts of it. But he then says that Brian give him a wrap of cocaine. Now there's different. You don't know exactly how much it is because the police, it's changed 3 times, the amount, the fee, and we're talking about a wrap, but basically I think it amounts to about 0.5 gram. And what happens is this 0.5 gram of cocaine that has been used as a payment to this Zorba from Brian. That's what he was meant, like Brian supplying the 0.5 gram to go and get his wife on it, as if that's like that. But that's all we, you expect the papers to do this, but then it starts getting a bit more messy because this wrap that has been used as payment to and this evidence was what they put Brian in prison for in the first place. Now, as for the police, their conduct is it's not even bumbling police officers bungling, like when drugs are seized, in any form, whatever drug, they have to go, when something is being used as an exhibit, that exhibit has to, before it can be used in evidence, it goes through what they call a chain of custody. And that chain of custody has to be so watertight that sample cannot have been tampered with. It's a whole big thing. I mean, I know if most people have watched Line of Duty. Do you remember with the Ros Huntley, the evidence that she was trying to check? This rap that was used to put Brian in prison, it was accepted as evidence by the CPS, and it had been through. It had been through so many different people And the police did not come into possession of this rap until a month after it had been, like, literally seized by the news. Zorba's acting for the News of the World. The News of the World are the ones that took it to be analysed. And let me tell you how that goes. There's a Dr. Jack Chuddy. And what makes me very interested in this is I wonder how many other convictions he's been involved in, because this Dr. Chuddy is he works for Eclipse Solar Science, something like that. Anyway, Brian's got the paperwork. He's gone out of my head for the moment. But it was attached to Vulcan Science. No. But it also says on there that the company who Dr. Chuddy works for has a home office license to legally be in possession of a Class A drug. Not Dr. Chuddy. It doesn't refer. It's the company. And that basically says that the company are able to store Class A controlled drugs on site at the lab. It cannot at no point say this Dr. Chuddy is allowed to accept drug evidence from a random journalist who he says just turned up at his door and handed him this packet, and this journalist identified himself as like I said, the names will come, but I'm just laying out the groundwork. And so this Dr. Chuddy says he's a friend. He's the one who analysed the cocaine and he weighed the cocaine. So he's not attached to the police. This hasn't gone through police channels. It wasn't recovered by the police. It was recovered by the News of the World, who then went and set it off to be analysed to this Dr. Chuddy. But they take it to his home, right? And he fully admits that. He says this guy knocked it. So this Dr. Chuddy said the guy, and he took the rap and he put it on the scales. He weighed it, and then he said the next day he takes it to his office to be analysed. Now, all this up, you've got to remember that this rap is what is going to be used to convict or try and convict or put somebody in prison. Yeah? And it still isn't in an evidence bag or an exhibit bag. Its origins have not been by the police. Yeah? So at this time, the police have had no official involvement in this whatsoever. Right? And then a month later, the police are asked, but it was a Williams, a John Williams DC-16. This is what's on these legal paper. It's because, right, this John Williams was on duty. So these officers were on duty, and they got a call or a radio, whatever it was, to go to this Jack Chuddy's home to pick up the said wrap of cocaine. Now, when you're dealing with evidence that's going to fuck about with a man's freedom and his life, it's meant to be, well, and we're talking about something that was, they're saying was taken in payment to go and do, like, not harm, but to go and, right? That's quite serious evidence, right? Drug Brian's not a junkie, and he certainly ain't a cokehead, yeah, and he certainly would. But the whole thing that's been orchestrated by our wonderful, truthful, most wonderful journalists from the News of the World, yeah, it hasn't gone through official police testing. It hasn't gone through, but now the police have gone to this chuddy's home a month later and picked up the evidence, the rap. And it has then been filed under miscellaneous, he said he filed it under. Now, can you see how that rap could have been tampered with at any time? Yeah. But the CPS then decided that this was legit evidence. And there are a couple of statements in there from, I think it's the police forensic site, the official police forensic scientist, yeah, has raised concerns of the chain of custody of this said evidence. It's drugs evidence. Like, why did this Chuddy, who took the evidence, he said, to his lab the next morning after getting it and analysing it, why is it then back at his ass? Why would you take this wrap of cocaine from your lab where you are legally allowed to store Class A drugs? Was you allowed to store Class A drugs, whether it be one wrap, whether it be this is being used to put somebody in prison. This evidence is being used to put somebody in prison. And not only just put him in prison, he's lost out. Like Brian would have been an amazing dad. You know, he'd been a cool dad. And because of all of this fighting for his child in the first place, because that's how you end up in the family courts, and then you end up in prison for a crime that you get found not guilty for. Because let me tell you what happened at the very end of it as well. The evidence got lost. It got lost. Now, the police that are involved in it, there are so many police officers in and around this, well, supposed police officers, because I don't even think that they can be real, because if they are real, they're not identifying what station they're from, they're not identifying, you have no idea of where they're attached to. Now, I happen to have here, when my dog Ronnie got taken, I mean, we're talking years ago, the police took him, that's another story in itself. They had him for 6 months, but it turned into a criminal case because he wasn't. It was. But I have proper legal police statements document. Now, the documents that you're going to be shown are meant to be from going through official police channels, going through, and the chain of custody of this rap has already had concerns raised. Yeah, already had concerns raised by the actual proper police forensic who was saying this is very unusual. It wasn't taken by police, and he even puts that when the police come to, because after obviously they've got it proper tested, and by the time it's got to them, I'm sure there was cocaine in it. I doubt if there was jack shit in it in the first place, but when he's gone to pick it up from the lab, the police officer, this forensic scientist actually makes a note that this police officer did not sign or date the sum that was put. He put it into an exhibit bag, but he did not sign or date it. And it might seem a minor thing to people, but you've got to remember that this was used to put an innocent guy in prison because they can. 56 days. And 56 days to somebody who's not a and you just got to remember that Brian has paid his taxes, he's paid, they've had, and he hasn't done anything wrong. Yeah, he hasn't done anything wrong. But this started with a family court judge basically saying that if he breaches any of this injunction, there is going to be a fixed 56-day sentence. And this little rap was used to enforce that sentence. But then he got found not guilty. But my whole point was the CPS knew that the chain of the chain of custody, that this evidence that is being used to put Brian in prison and take his daughter and rip his family, it's beyond. The CPS would have known that wasn't admissible in court. A court would could you just imagine the police seal from a drug dealer, they seal drugs, they take the drugs, yeah. By the time this gets to court, they have to have a watertight case, and if there can be proved that there was a chance for these drugs to be tampered with, there's no way you're getting it shouldn't. The CPS should never in a million years took that on as evidence that's admissible when it was obtained by the News of the World. It was then taken to a News of the World forensic scientist. Why did the News of the World need a forensic scientist? Oh, hang on a minute. Someone else got done for cocaine. Wasn't it to Lisa? Yeah. I wonder if old Jack Chuddy was the forensic scientist for that as well then. Yeah, dropped off at his ass. Now, to me, there is no forensic scientist who's going to have Home Office licence to have drugs in his ass. Yeah, but also as well, it's not following procedure. And when you're in possession of stuff that can put people away for God knows how many years, no. There ain't no dropping off shit at your ass. And when you see the statement of this judge, you're going to see where it goes. And this man holds evidence and decides. No. But how are you sitting on it for a month? Why did you hold? Why take it from the lab that you've gone and analysed it at? That you said. He said he weighed it to start with, and it was 0.0000. But that even changes 3 times within the in the course of the journey of the rap, the payment to the hitman. And when I say hitman, it sounds ridiculous, but this is the wording of the News of the World. And we all know what a wonderful, upstanding, truthful, place that breeds. But we're going above and beyond when it comes to fake stories here. Because what isn't fake is Brian spent time. He done a night in the Ville and then he went Chelmsford. 56 days. He even remembers his bloody prison number. But this prison sentence was generated from a family court. And there is blatant disregard for just your basic rights. And then we get to the solicitor, Richard Mallet. Now, I know you've all heard Brian say his name, but I've now realised this Richard Mallet, who is a solicitor, and as far as I'm aware, solicitors are under oath, to represent their client to the best of their ability. And he I think he's quite a high flyer kind of solicitor, and he didn't know he wasn't kicking up when they charged Brian at the police station. He got charged. This is just even more ridiculous, for supplying and possessing this said rap of nothing. Well, but when I say a rap, it wasn't. It was described by Miss Simon Werrett, Eastman Evans. Yeah, it was described. He used it half a gram. All right, but because of this half a gram, Brian was charged with breaching his injunction. Yeah, because apparently he was paying this Zorba to go and get his wife out of her nut on half a gram. Yeah, all right. And he gave him a disposable camera and £100. Right? But to be charged with supplying and being in possession of a Class A drug that had been in so many different people's hands before it got to the police, but they've gone and charged him. And it was either Richard Mallett was there that day or he sent a representative. Now, no objection raised, no screaming, because, like I said, the chain of custody has to be watertight. For it to be used in evidence as court, to be used in court as evidence, this chain of custody has to be so watertight, it can't have been tampered with. So the chain of custody, obviously Comrade Brown, Kamel Zorba, who, by the way, got paid, I think it's over 15,000. There's receipts and everything that Brian can show you. Basically, got paid. It was either 15,000 or £20,000 for his help with Brian's story. Yeah. And like I said, the guy who brought Zorba into Brian's life was his friend Reese. And I know that really hurts Brian. It really does. Because it's becoming more and more clear that whatever this was about in the first place, they've done so much dodgy shit, putting him in prison, coming from the family courts, which hardly anybody knows about. And you know, this is a man's life, and he ain't done nothing wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong to warrant, but it's set a pattern for the next 8 years. Like, the police just abuse their powers where he's concerned. But, I mean, I even thought the recent arrest for malicious communications, there was some dodgy shit going on there. Because that many police shouldn't turn up for a malicious communications. But this, the evidence that was taken on by police officers was picked up from a News of the World forensic scientist's house. They got a call to go and pick it up at his house, home address. Now, they said that they was on duty at the time. So they're going with these. But even picking up a piece of evidence from someone's house, and you're going to use that evidence to try and bring down... Brian was a celebrity. People did know who Brian was. Brian had a following. And you're going to go and pick up evidence and have that... Not even put it in exhibit, sign or date it, so anybody can sign. Like, this is what is being used to ruin a man's life and career, everything. But the prison sentence originated from the family court. And it doesn't... And then he got a not guilty. So he ended up doing a sentence that was passed by the family court that he served the sentence, but without committing the crime. Like that's just ridiculous. And like I said, the blatant lack of like, it's so ridiculous. I'm in shock. But Richard Mallett did not act in Brian's best interests. He didn't, as a first year law student could tell you that the chain of custody is one of the most important. With an exhibit that's being used as an exhibit, the chain of custody is paramount. Yeah. But if they're doing this to someone who hasn't done a thing wrong, like, you know, he's a corrupt forensic analyst. That's the bottom line. Yeah. He does it for the news of the world. And also, as well, it's stated in legal documents that the Home Office has given this Eclipse company a license to keep controlled substances at their lab. Yeah, the company was given the license. Dr. Jack Chuddy would not, and if he has got a license from the Home Office to have controlled a Class A drug in his ass, that needs to be looked at. Because why are the Home Office giving people that are not police, like, he's not a police forensic scientist, that's my whole point. But the police have took on evidence that he's been sitting on, like, how does that work? And the CPS, because I said to Brian, if I didn't know that you'd gone to prison, I would say this whole motherfucking thing's staged. Even when the police are addressing each other and kind of it's like spelt sergeant wrong. And there's an email, Simon Werrett. Now, when you're dealing with the police, yeah, the rank will always come first. You know, it's DS Werrett, DCI Werrett, whatever his rank is. When you're dealing with police business, you will always be addressed by your rank. And the email is to Simon Werrett from John William. Was it John William? But he said DC16. And that's not an official police, because what does the DC stand for? Detective Constable, but it comes after your name on an official police document. And then he's referring to Simon Werrett. He says, addresses it to sergeant, and he spells sergeant wrong. It is, but there's another guy called Childs, PC Childs, and all of these have got the maddest, silly, made up names. There's always two numbers on a police thing that will identify what station they're attached to. Yeah, that's a, and it was like, I know CX was Charing Cross, it was either CD, it was West End Central. Then you got, and each station has like these identifying, because if you are a police officer and you go into another jurisdiction and you've got, you're out of your kind of little bit, it matters. It matters. And there are rules that I know that the police don't always follow, but this is not even just not following the rules. This is an absolute, complete and utter, blatant disregard for the rules. Because the fact is what was used as evidence should never have been admissible, but then it was like, they lost it. It got destroyed. The evidence, the rap disappeared then. But the fact that the CPS decided to charge Brian with, let me tell you, supplying and possession of a Class A drug. Cocaine. In all my life, I have never heard of somebody being accused of being a supplier and a possessor over literally half a gram of cocaine, and they charged him with literally, you might as well say, possession with intent to supply. This rap warranted a possession with intent to supply. And the minute he got charged, he was going to go to jail for them 56 days. But then he got a not guilty. Because he weren't guilty and the evidence got lost. And, you know, the thing is I keep saying this, Brian is not a criminal. He's never been in the criminal life. And yet, he's charged with it, like, and the evidence that was, it's gross. I wouldn't even say it's negligence. It's an absolute, complete and utter disregard. And it's like, they're blatant with it. The police seem to think that they can do whatever they want to Brian. And I mean, why else would 20 feds be sent for a militia to arrest someone for malicious communications that's got no criminal record whatsoever? I'm not too sure why police are turning up with angle grinders and fire extinguishers. I'm saying now, who signed off on that operation? Because then, obviously, you've got to look at Operation Fernbridge, which was definitely not a sanctioned police operation. Because if it was, why? Sorry. Just I need to get this in. In the statements that Brian's got, the name of the judge has been redacted. Now, this is on the fact that the name of the judge who put the sentence, right? Judges' names don't get redacted as far as I'm aware. If they're handing out sentences, why is the name redacted? There's a lot of redactions, but it's the police officer's conduct that is, it's very, very, very worrying because it's destroyed his life. Yeah, not only did it just goes to show you the contempt, because like I said, he ain't committed a crime. He's paid his dues, he pays his taxes, he's not a danger to his child. He does this, and the thing is, if we let it slide, which seems to be happening, because I don't think any solicitor wants to take up, because Richard Mallet had done a hatchet job on Brian, making Brian seem like he was a problem client kind of thing. It's, I've seen some of the correspondence, and that was definitely what Richard Mallet was trying to, because it deters anybody else from taking his case. And the reason for that is because any solicitor, anybody worth their salt can see that there's been a blatant disregard for normal protocols. I don't even know how many of these police officers are real, because they don't conduct themselves like proper police officers. I mean, also, why would police officers or somebody sign off on Operation Fernbridge? And I've heard, and he's a legit copper, is Tony Atkins. And Brian's asking him, do you know about Fernbridge? And this Tony Atkins saying, no, I haven't. He's basically saying, I haven't heard of Operation Fernbridge. Right? It might have been something, it might have been an offshoot of Operation Fairbank, which was a legitimate police operation. And that is what Fernbridge is basically been, if you Google it, Operation Fernbridge, it's under the umbrella of Operation Fairbank. Why is someone, because someone in the police would have had to sign off for that if it's a legit operation, and we're talking about the Andrew Ash, the fate, the first Coal Beach, you can say. But why is, you had Bill Maloney, who was saying now you're going to interview what they say is a credible police witness, been checked, naming such high, we're talking Prince Andrew, even Epstein was thrown in there, Richard Mallet as well, but that, that's not what I mean, I'm just sticking to kind of like things that are just not normal. And this, if it was a genuine police, it had to have been signed off. And you're sending people like Bill Maloney and Chris Fay, who, according to the media, so we go by that, according to official, he's been done for fraud. Right? Ex-candidate, right? He's a fraudster. Been done for it. Well, why would you send these men to film a police witness who's naming some of the biggest names in the land, Prince Andrew, David Icke, and that brings me on to you are right, and I'm just trying to show you a picture of how this. There's nothing fake about this for Brian. Brian's had his life torn apart by absolute blatant, disregard for any rights, as and from when you ain't even done anything, yeah, it's just beyond. But there's a lot more on top of that. Like David Icke, well, you wait, but this Andrew Ash is being used to make allegations against, top cabinet ministers. The list is like the Uzo. So I would have thought that was it was an area of sensitivity, because you're not sending, and the only active police officer or who was meant to be an active police officer in and around that was John Widger. So, if he was an active police officer, he was the person who went and picked Brian up and took Brian down to Bill Maloney on a police, they was going down on behalf of the police to interview a witness for Now, the thing is, it weren't the first time this Andrew Ash had been interviewed. He was interviewed by Ian Puddock, because Ian Puddock clearly tweets, I spoke to Andrew, who described in graphic detail, and basically has given, one tweets it 70 hours to Operation Fernbridge, and then the other one said 100 hours worth of interviews. And oh God, I've lost my train of thought then. Hang on, 100 hours of it. So yeah, he, and as far as Brian was aware that this man, this Andrew Ash, was been checked out. I mean, his story went in the front page of the, he's believing that this man is a genuine, verified, confirmed, the finger confirmed, victim of what he was claiming. So, number one, I think there's a very lack of breach of security here. Yeah, because how did Bill Maloney become the kind of the the man orchestrating this. He's the one who took Brian down. He was like, I mean, I know, but Puddock's a different like thingy. Bill Maloney was given permission to film a police witness. That and Chris Fay, who's now been done for fraud. You're telling me that the police basically outsourced to old pie and mash Bill Maloney and John Wedger and Chris Fay. And let's not forget James Fielding. And where David Icke's concerned, Brian's hearing all this, his head's spinning, he's believing. And when I say to you, like, David Icke, everyone starts with David, and everyone kind of, you look at David as somebody who's going to represent injustice, who's someone who's going to fight against, if someone's been, that he's going to fight for the, he's going to fight for the, the person whose rights have been absolutely defiled. So, obviously, when Brian hears Andrew Ash, he's got the recording, there's that, and Bill Maloney is saying to Andrew Ash, you said David Icke penetrated you on the boat, right? Brian he called David a nonce, yeah, but you know what? That was emotion. You just imagine, like, somebody who you've looked up to, you believed that you thought was you'd have been told by a credible witness, you've been told he's a credible witness, and this is a legitimate police investigation. So, if Andrew was caught lying, then that's perjury. So Brian is 100% believing that David Icke is buggering disabled children on Charles Napier's boat. And yes, forgive him for being emotional and angry, yeah? But the letter or the email that was returned, right, basically David Icke replied. And do you know what? I wish I could get it up, because when Brian read it out to me, I was mortified. It starts off basically calling Brian a moronic child who hasn't got the brain cells to remember to breathe. Basically saying how dare you, like, completely not addressing that it wasn't Brian who made this shit up. Brian heard from a legitimate, who he believed was a legitimate police witness and had been certified and verified as such. the Coal Beach turnout. This was the prototype. Andrew Ash was definitely meant to be the Coal Beach. They obviously, because it didn't work with Andrew Ash, they had to pull somebody else in. But you see the similarities, right? You see, that Coal Beach was used to bring, to say the elite paedophile ring didn't exist, and that's what Andrew Ash was doing. The people he was naming, same names, tattoos, the old, but that's right. But the reaction from David Icke is not the reaction of somebody who has any empathy for somebody who's been established as having mental health issues. Yeah. Now, bearing in mind, like I said, it wasn't Brian who made this shit. Brian didn't decide to call David Icke a nonce for no reason. He's just sat there and heard graphic details of David Icke buggering, sodomising disabled children. And he believed that to be true because he was told that this was a credible police operation, right? And then, at the end of it, David Icke threatens Brian with legal action if he goes out and said. Now, number one, you've got Bill Maloney on camera saying to Andrew Ash, You did say, let's get it back to David Icke. You said David Icke penetrated you on Charles Napier's boat. You come from Amsterdam, went and picked him up on the Isle of Wight, and he was buggering disabled children. So why is Brian getting threatened with legal action when he's just a cameraman? Why would David Icke feel that he can threaten somebody with legal action if he goes out in public and starts this? Now, what about legal action against Bill Maloney? That it's not right. And when I say the letter, the email that Brian got from David Icke, if he wasn't as strong, you just imagine, someone who's, and I'm not going to, I idolise David Icke. Yeah, so to have somebody who you believe is somebody that's a good person calling you a moronic child and you ain't even got the brain cells to learn, like it was just so bad. Knowing that Brian has mental health issues anyway, but why are you getting off with the legal action? You get legal action what? Like this is what Bill Maloney was leading Andrew Ash to say. How can Brian be threatened with legal action? But it just seems like it's all gloves off where Brian's concerned. You can do what you want. And like I said, he ain't done nothing wrong. He seriously has done nothing wrong. And it all started in the fucking family court because he was fighting for his daughter. And he's been convicted on evidence that should never in a million years been taken into evidence as an exhibit. And you get a solicitor to represent you because Brian has no idea about criminal, like he doesn't know how things are meant to be. He doesn't know how things work because he's not a bloody criminal. But Richard Mallett, as his legal advisor, did like any the CPS can't take on tampered with evidence. It's ridiculous. And it's just like, the bottom line is it's Brian today. Who's it going to be tomorrow? Your son? Your nephew? Your family? Because it's as easy as that. Brian has not done nothing wrong. And he literally has not. He's been, it's getting beyond a joke. Do what you want to Brian. It don't matter. No, no one and it's recognised that he has mental health issues. And yet, they all go on about, the treat mental health, this, that. What, what does it do to a mental health man when you've got police officers, or who they say are police, saying that he's got a threat to his life? What? They just don't care. And I'll tell you something, I know Law and Order's broke down and shit, but this goes beyond. This goes beyond, beyond. That a exhibit that is used to put somebody in prison was not taken or recovered, they called it, recovered by police. It hasn't seen an exhibit bag. It sat in Dr. Jack Chuddy's ass for a month. Why did it take a month for the police to pick this up? But they're picking it up, and then there's some dodginess with the camera and the £100. Because Brian clearly does hand Zorba the camera. He's not denying that. But he never had gloves on. And the only way his fingerprints would not be on that money or the camera is the only way he got was if he was wearing gloves. He clearly wasn't wearing gloves. But then it says his fingerprints were not found on the camera. Where do fingerprints go? Brian said, okay. But where did the fingerprints go? Because they should be there. They're not. He's not denying handling the camera. And where did the fingerprints disappear to? That who forensically tested that then? And the chain of custody with that, but that evidence wasn't what was used. It was the wrap, and this wrap started off being handed to a obviously corrupt forensic guy who does forensic testing for dodgy shit. Yeah, at his home address. Well, if he ain't got a license to hold Class A, whether it be half a gram or whether it be the bottom line, if you've got Class A drug in your home, that's possession. That is possession, and he admits taking it to the lab, getting it tested, and then bringing it home again. And what was it doing? Sitting in the drawer for a month. And then all of a sudden, police officers arrive to pick up this evidence that has been in this guy's probably junk drawer or sitting around. What the fuck is someone holding on to a wrap of coke for a month before handing it to the police? Can you see how absurd this is? And like I said, it's just basic rights that you have as a human. But police setting up criminals and that's that world. Brian's got no previous drugs. Brian don't even take cocaine. Yeah, let alone but even if he did this, but he doesn't, and he Class A is not his cup. He's a Class B. Yeah, weed, and he's proved that time and time and time again. Yeah, but there is no history of it. To be charged with supplying and possession of a Class A drug, and it results to literally half a gram. That's the CPS are because they would have sanctioned the charging. And I know there's corrupt shit out there, but this is going beyond because the CPS are complicit with Brian being charged with an offence that justified putting him in prison, taking away a man's freedom with this so-said exhibit. And even at the lowest level, like the police forensic, in his statement said, this is a very unusual case. He was worried. I think there's about 6 people had handled that rap before it become police evidence. And but what is even crazier is he basically says he noted that when this PC or whatever it was, Childs, I think it was the Childs guy or the Williams guy, one of them two, he said, after my examination, when the police come and pick, he put it into a forensic bag, an exhibit police forensic bag, but didn't sign or date it. Well, And his legal representative, Richard Mallet, who went on to be got done for fraud as well, is as never even raised. Like they watched Brian be charged with an offence that it's just supply and possession of half a gram of coke. It's just, I don't know if anyone, it's just, if it weren't so serious, it'd be fucking laughable. No. And in the, you know, Hitman, them sort of evil Brian Harvey and his and it's just been allowed to happen, and it's still happening. Yeah, and just the police's actions, like, there's definitely forged paperwork without a shadow of a doubt. You know, and this Dr. Jack Chuddy, like, how he does forensic analysis for the News of the World. So I'm in Magda, and like I said, you know, look, just look at the Talisa thing. I wonder who analysed them substances then. Yeah. And if it's that Dr. Jack Chuddy, do you know what? A corrupt forensic scientist is going to put people like, and you know, nah, because there's no rules where these people are concerned. Even if you paid your dues and you've been a good citizen and you haven't done anything wrong, they are acting completely outside of what. And I mean, I know that there are corrupt. We all know that, but this goes beyond that. And the setups and the accepting evidence after a month it's been in some dodgy forensic scientist job. No, it's and Richard Mallet, I believe that Brian, to be quite honest with you, I believe that Brian needs to he needs to be well, questions need to be answered. He's like, he never legally represented his client to the best of his ability, and as far as I can see, it's called perverting the course of justice. And there seems to be quite a lot of perverting the course of justice where these feds are concerned. I'm not going to lie. I'm just astounded at how blatantly there's no protocols. There's no it's like they just don't give a shit. They just think this. They think Brian ain't going to be this, and you know, it's. I mean, we've got. There's just so much. Corrupt, but this isn't even corrupt. This is a blatant set up. But not, and then they look. No, this is the crazy thing about. They lost the evidence. The rap got sniffed, yeah, by somebody because the evidence just disappeared. And then Brian's reached, you know, like I said, David Icke, you would think would want to help, not, and the word, the language that he used towards Brian was just not the language of somebody who's got empathy in them. Let's put it that way. Wasn't the action? I mean, I'm not gonna Brian called him a nonce because that's exactly what, you know, a legitimate certified police witness guy, a witness, who's been abused by David Icke says so. So yeah, I mean, you dirty fucking stinking nonce. That's exactly what you know, and when you feel like the whole world's against you, David Icke has been called a lot worse than a nonce over the years. Oh come on, yeah, but his reaction to Brian was a very personal attack. It was, and then threatening him with legal action. What about Bill Maloney? What about Andrew Ash? The one who accused you, David. And then, when Brian's kind of apologised, they had the conversation. And David Icke wasn't aware that this Andrew Ash was the guy on who was put on BBC's Panorama. You know, the cutting edge of you know, forbidden journalism. They go wherever, you know. Panorama's such a good investigative programme, and everything on Panorama's true. But they also used Andrew after all this bullshit, and they knew he was false. They then pushed him on Panorama as David. And why would Panorama, a very renowned, cutting-edge kind of documentary-style programme? I liked Panorama. I'm not gonna lie. I did used to believe that everything on there would have been true. But they're using like a recycled false witness and pushing him as David. And I would like to say, like, I'm not gonna lie. The people pay the BBC to make these factual programmes and bring them the fact that's why they pay their licence. And I would say that they're kind of I don't know what it is, but we're talking about the same BBC that named Marina Abramovich, you know, the spirit cooker who throws piss, blood, semen over a child and writes shit on people's walls and that, as a visionary artist. She was pushed as a visionary artist of our generation. And not only that, Alan Yentop went to her yard, went to her ass. And I doubt if you're going to go to Marina Abramovich's house and not notice the dead kid art and like, you know, but she's a visionary artist. And obviously they're not very good at spotting nonsense because of Jimmy Savile. And it's absolutely mind-blowing that people pay the BBC to chat shit, because that's what they do. They use recycled fake victims. Didn't even work the first time round, so what the fuck are you recycling him for? Putting him on Panorama like it's legit. Talking about tattoos on their fuck off. It's just like another blatant piss take. Because how can Panorama justify changing Andrew Ash, who's clearly a false witness, used in a false police operation that seems to be legitimised by the BBC? Because they're using the same victim but calling him David. Why are you now calling him David? Why ain't he Andrew? If he's a legitimate, why ain't he Andrew? That all makes sense. I mean, who put him forward? Like, I'm not going to lie, people. Put a picture of Andrew Ash and then Camilla Batmangeli side by side, and you will not believe the resemblances. Because I'm saying to Brian, they are pulling these people out from, like, where are all these fake getting picked? Like, where do they come from? Why Andrew Ash? Why would they have picked Andrew Ash? And there are so many other like irregularities and that where this case is concerned. It goes beyond corruption. They're just taking the absolute piss. But I would like to know why did they? Who is that? What did they do? Just walk along? Oh yeah, he looks all right. Let's ask him to be a fake witness and name all these people. But Andrew clearly has had some his knowledge. He's a cameraman. He's somebody who knows a cameraman. He definitely got learning, and that's been established that he's definitely disabled because he said he was on Charles Napier's boat, which I've no doubt he was. I do doubt about the buggering because it was thrown out there like that. But when he talks about being on Charles Napier's boat with the Azimuth Trust, he's not lying. You can see it. He talks about going around stuff. And he's being led in... Bill Maloney's clearly leading the witness, which is a police no-no. If you're taking a witness statement, you can't be saying, oh yeah, you told me that David Icke penetrated you. Let's bring it back to David Icke. And that in itself is because I think like the police had to send someone like Bill Maloney because they couldn't warrant interviewing a witness like that. When someone's giving a witness statement against some of the highest people in the land, naming some of the highest people in the land, who did go on to become like it's just a... They couldn't send a real police officer because it's just so against the boat. But why would they sanction? And never mind, I know Ian Puddock supplied the Ninja camera, and I know he bought it for Brian. But does it matter who like, to be quite honest with you, he bought that Ninja camera to film a fake police operation. And this fake police operation, after like being absolutely, it's known it's fake, then Panorama legitimise this fake operation by using the same fake witness. But then just after that, when it's realised this ain't gonna, this can't run, this is too hot, we can't do it, we can't use Andrew Ash, they had to come up with Coal Beach. And then Coal Beach is apparently got 18 years in jail for perjury. And because of him, they said the elite paedophile Westminster ring didn't exist. But from the get-go, Coal Beach was meant to be Andrew Ash. Andrew Ash was meant to be the Coal Beach, obviously. Yeah. But when obviously it got so hot they can't run with fucking Andrew Ash no more. Yeah. But they still try to legitimise the Firmbridge, this police Firmbridge witness who's given over 100 hours of testimony according to Ian Puddock. And very graphic details. They've tried to legitimise fake, and the bottom line is when that one didn't work, they still pulled out the same bullshit, but with Coal Beach. And that is just ridiculous. It's just, like I said, if it weren't so serious, it'd be proper laughable. Because it just goes to show you the slide that is... like I said, this wasn't even a criminal case to start with. It originates from the family court. And I still don't understand how a family court judge is able to attach a prison sentence to... like... And this starts off so dodgy, and to this day, the police are still abusing their powers. And there was a case on Scar City, the guy who puts up all the news things about police, right? And I'm going to find it because I only remembered about it the other day. And in London, there was a police officer. And his second name was Mahmood. And he'd just been arrested and convicted of liaising with criminal gangs by setting up fake raids on drug. They pretend they've done a raid on the drug. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you know, they'll pretend that they raid it and take in the equipment, but it's not a sanctioned police operation. They just go and use it, right? But he was arrested. He was a London cop, this Mahmood, and he was allowing legit police cars and things like that, but to be used on fake operations. Now, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but the name Mahmood seems to be familiar to me. Oh, I wonder why. Oh, that was the News of the World guy, Mazza Mahmood, the fake sheikh. Ah, now what are the chances of there being two Mahmoods, both as corrupt can be? One's a legitimate police officer, and one is the News of the World's fake sheikh who sets people up left, right and centre. I think I'm going to dig a little bit further into that case, because I did say to Brian from the office, what are the chances of that? This Mahmood guy was a genuine, legitimate police officer who had been authorising, which means he's not just a lowland. He'd been authorising police cars to be used. Just, you know, I mean, it's not like it's not unheard of, because it does happen, but. The fact that the name Mahmood and Mazza Mahmood has obviously got very thingy connections with the police, because they pick up evidence from the forensics site who's attached to the News of the World, Mazza Mahmood. And there's also another guy, Conrad Brown, but like I said, this is about police. Yeah, but he is definitely a gatekeeper. But this is about the abuse of the family courts, overstepping boundaries, redacting out judges' names. It ain't a mafia trial. It ain't a fucking thingy trial where you've got to hide your identity. You're a family court judge. Why, you know, judges stand by their decision. Why is his name redacted? And redacted by who? Who has the authority to redact legal police correspondence? Like, you know, it's not just the office boy that does the redactions. It's done by intelligence services. And I think everybody knows that. You know, just anybody can't sit there and decide to blank out this, blank out that. Things are blanked out for reasons of national security, basically. If... by naming it, how is a judge name being redacted from official paper? It just doesn't make sense. Not even that Judge Palfrey with the Hampstead judge had her name redacted. And that only normally happens when the judge is like, but a judge's name being redacted means that judge has, like, you make a decision and send somebody, like literally send someone jail, and then you have your name redacted. That's nah, and that's a family court, and that's where all of this started. But also, I'm not going to stay on for long, because do you know what? Since I've been at Brian, this has bothered me. Because this is, like I said, this is correct, and I'd like to know how many people that Jack Chuddy's done analyse it. He now works for pharmaceuticals and some food club testing food. Like, it's but onwards and upwards, and what does seem to be a very familiar pattern. Ever since dealing with Brian's case, it seems that everybody has gone onwards and upwards. And then got done for fraud. Two people officially, Chris Fay, who was on, he's the one with confirmed. has been given clearance and access, and and this would have concerned, like when you name it, saying the Prince Andrew's buggered you and this, that, and the other. It's sensitive information that should not be put in the hands of people like Bill Maloney or Chris Fay. And I am still absolutely convinced that James Fielding is James Esposito. Yeah. And also, do not forget, James Fielding was the one who covered the Baby P, saying that John was involved in Baby P. Because there's no evidence of John Wedger as a police officer. There is none. And he served in the River Police to start with, which, if you notice that Wayne Couzons, he was in an elite, they call it an elitist, like but they don't mix with other police officers. Yeah, so, police officers saying Charing won't know River Police, because their paths would hardly ever cross. The River Police have their own, and that Wayne Couzons, he was in the elite parliamentary security, whatever it had to do with the embassies. But what is what was I just about to say then? Oh God, what was I just about to say about the back job? Now, about being a police officer in Soho, and I have said this from the beginning, and I'm still saying it now. I did not know John. I did not recognise John. I had never seen John before, right? And my reasoning, and I think I said it on the live, was, I probably don't know him because he wasn't corrupt. But there was another police officer who was definitely 100% of vice. Now, I was a high profile in Soho. I never worked anywhere else. And I was very high profile, very well known. And there is no way, if John was on the vice, I would not have ever seen him. But this Christopher Plowman, who is a police, he wrote a book called Crossing the Line. And him, I do know. Him, I do remember. And he was friends with John. But there is also another police whistleblower who's meant to be a witness, who Lou Dickens tried to think. And he was basically saying John's misrepresented, John's told some lie, right? And I didn't want to have any interaction with him, because I did say to Louise, listen, I've already been burned by one whistleblowing detective. I'm not about to fucking start listening to another one. But what is very strange is I asked this Julian King, his name is, do you know Christopher Plowman? And bearing in mind, Christopher Plowman has wrote a book and is and genuinely was a police officer. Julian King had no idea who he was. But he knew all about John. And that John said that he'd been in the force for 27 years. It was just absolute. And he was going to do a citizen's arrest on John when he finishes his walk at Rainbow Wood. This is what is being said. And to be quite honest with you, there is nothing official, absolutely nothing official to prove that John was a police officer. And because he's been going so long, you'd think that he would have been, if he wasn't credible, but someone by now would have. But the police is very compartmentalised, and it's people tend to stick within their own. If they're not in that station, they will know a couple of others, but it's not They wouldn't know someone from the River Police. Like, anybody could come and say, oh yeah, he's from Wiltshire, detective, right? All it takes is one dodgy plate to vouch for them, and that's it. Boom. And this John Wedger, you know, the protecting children against it, right, was built up online. But then it spills out to the real world, and he gets access to real victims. And the John Wedger Foundation in itself was obtaining money by deception, because John wasn't, I mean, all he was doing, there was putting up so-called survivors, which, yeah, but they've all gone on to, you know, charities, get GoFundMe. I mean, Werrett, DCI or Simon fucking Werrett, running a charity that is doing a GoFundMe for a building. It's how it just doesn't make, for me, it just does not make sense. Because how do you become a reverend? And, you know, for me, they do not act as policemen. Like, the directorate of the serious organised crime, it's not actually soccer, I know that, but it's serious. They're all the same. They're like, come on, mate. They're the same sort of calibre. He wasn't retired off. I'm not quite sure how he left the force, but he left the force and become a street pastor. And part of the Ascension. Now, he tweets so much about, oh, my time was as a murder to you. What murder did you work on then? Yeah, you know, because the paperwork, the terminology, is not the terminology of a directorate of soccer who believes, who actually, like, basically, you're telling me that the police believed that Brian paid Zorba £500, £100 cash and a Kodak disposable camera to do well, whatever way you want to look at it. It was a hit on the wife, but it's not in as in a kill shot. It's as in you know, there's a ways of assassinating the character. You know, it's oh god, I've lost my train of thought again. But, you know, I like I said, I'm doing this tonight, and I will be following up with every piece of documentation, yeah, that I've spoken about tonight, and there's more. And the David Icke letter. I was trying to do it as I was speaking, but I got too confused. And like I said, you know, I do find these, I'm not comfortable, you know, and I'm still finding my way, and I'm not very confident. But it is the Mac's easier to use than my other thing. I will say I love it, but you know, it's just about getting the, because I want to drag docs in and read them to you as I'm speaking, which you know, that's what I really need to do. But everything I have mentioned on this live this evening is backed up with official doc. And when I say you're just going to be astounded at the way this has gone. And to be quite honest with you, you know, how much more is going to be, like, police need to be accountable, and the CPS, because having a dodgy person in the CPS is absolutely ridiculous, and there is no way a legitimate CPS would have taken on that exhibit evidence, the wrap that apparently contained white powder, which then turned out to be cocaine, right? That wouldn't be entered into evidence because of the chain of custody. And I cannot stress to people how important the chain of custody is. You know, if something's going to be used as evidence against somebody and put them in fucking prison, it has to be watertight. And sitting in some dodgy forensic scientist ass for a month, no. And then you get not guilty because they lost the evidence. And as I stress, he ain't done nothing wrong. You know, I've seen how he lives. And do you blame, like, his friend, well, someone who thought was his friend, but Reese is very integral to this because it was Reese who brought Zorba into Brian's life, which then started this whole... And Zorba got paid £15,000 or £20,000, you know, in cash by the News of the World. Why you got... He had to be the cheapest hitman. But it's just... There is just so much that does not add up. Yeah. And the basic rules have not been followed by the police. That has been allowed to happen... Because Brian doesn't know about these, so that's why you have a solicitor. You rely on the solicitor to represent you to the best of their ability. And that definitely didn't happen. And like I said, just the police, the CPS, and the family courts. Like I said, this all started in the family court. And the implications of all that is, like I said, Brian has not been allowed to have contact with his daughter. Missed out on being a dad. No history of violence. Hasn't done a thing wrong. But you've got the same family courts that are, if to be believed, if the legit story goes, are giving children back to the state that are abusing the children in the first place. They can't have it both ways, mate. So Brian not allowed to see, and not only is he not allowed to, he in the public, he's being crucified. And he ain't done nothing wrong. I'll tell you what he didn't do. He didn't bend over and take it, and that's the bottom line. The whole seems to me like his whole the only crime he's committed is he weren't going to be sodomised up the fucking arse for a bit of fame and fortune, because not a chance in hell. And with, you know, and he's been so publicly humiliated. Well, they tried to humiliate, even with the ease thing. They threw him out the band and ended his career over this E comment. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was encouraging people to... Leah Betts, she died. And I'm not taking away from Leah Betts. So, you know, Leah Betts, she died. But his whole career and everything finished because of it. And then you got Sean Atwood, who was not only... he was making the shit. And yet he's in schools doing the talk. Now, how does that work? How does that work? Because Sean Atwood should not even be in the... Like, look at him. Look at what he promotes. Look at what... Like, you know, and yeah, he's all right to go in schools. But Brian... who only turned around and said these were great. I'm not going to lie, at the time I was right wrapped up in the rave scene. I was like, yay! Right? They were great at that time. But just that comment got him, you know, ostracised. And they was literally trying to blame him for Leah Betts' death, basically saying that, you know, he's promoted them and then the young... Right? So how does Sean Atwood... ecstasy kingpin, he's making the shit as well, then become okay to go and talk in schools? And Brian's got more integrity in his little finger than Sean Atwood. You know, the people he's launched off his, the people that have been launched to you know, go on to have charities or it's even with Wilfred Wilfred Wrong, Wilfred the Wrong 'un, right? He's being promoted on that platform as the world-renowned expert on satanic ritual abuse. Can someone tell me how do you become an expert at satanic ritual abuse? The world-renowned expert at satanic ritual abuse. What university gives out that degree then? Who decides? How is he the world-renowned expert on satanic ritual abuse? But goes on Sean Atwood's twice, not just once, twice. And then we have Ian Puddock, the first citizen activist who works for the Queen. And when we say he works for the Queen, he was controlling of communications. Now, I'm not too sure how citizen activist fits in with someone who works and has access to the palace as well, because he's communications expert. Was he communications expert when Paul Kidd was running the child prostitution ring out of Buckingham Palace? Fact. Confirmed. Yeah. The Queen's butler. Was he running communications then? Because, you know, the bottom line is no citizen activist will be wrapped round Buckingham Palace. Will be doing communication. That's not a citizen activist. And how big, but because Sean Atwood said it must be true. Brian hasn't done any of that. Brian would never promote anybody who, like, you know, and it's just look at just look at the parallels here. You know, it's because the youth of today is the generation of tomorrow. And the way things are going, you know, and they're taking away, like I said, it's one thing being a criminal, but when you have not got no criminal convictions, you've got no, and he gets treated like malicious communications. They're coming round his house like riot gear. A malicious communication. Like, what? But yeah, the time they're taking to investigate the malicious communication, 3 extensions they've applied for, which I know it's got to be. There's how much, you know, what is the malicious communication sitting in Dr. Jack Chuddy's house or something? Like, what the fuck? But the absolute, and the fact is, he is they know about his mental health. They was doing checks on his mental health, worried about his mental health, and then they're turning up mob-handed, fire extinguishers for the dogs. Are you fucking joking me? For a malicious communication that they still investigate him. I'm not too sure how much investigating a malicious communications takes, to be quite honest with you. 3 extensions. And when police apply for an extension, it means they've got jack shit evidence, and they are trying to find evidence. But because he's telling you, you know, and he's got to stop, yeah. And they've got to be held accountable, because if you don't hold them accountable now, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And it could be your son they're coming for next, or it could be your old man. It could be, you know. Well, it will be. Because like I said, Brian just represents a normal person who got an opportunity that he grabbed with both hands. But there is no way he would have stayed in that industry. But because he weren't having it, this seems to be, and like I said, the police, it's got to stop. It's fucking got to stop. It really has got to stop. It's you know, I'll Pete it's sweeting. They've overstepped their boundaries. Yeah, and Brian's got every piece of evidence to back up everything that I've said. But I just want people to realise what Brian is dealing with and how the police are just out of control. You know, there's no laws, there's no boundaries. You take evidence on that's come from a fucking journalist from the News of the World. It's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And this is nothing to do with the phone hacking, you know. This is to do with the criminal and him in jail. The phone hacking, it's obvious to believe, but this is about something that originates because he's fighting for his daughter. Yeah, in the family court. And not to mention the wife was one of the dancers, Tom Watkins. You know, they're and poor Brian. I'm not gonna lie, his head's spinning because he's like, why, and I think what this all started about is not what it's about now, because they now know that he's got all this documented. I'm telling you now, he is going to bring this down crashing. The police and the CPS and the fact have to answer for the negligence and taking on evidence that has been through about 6 different people who are not even legitimate, and to put somebody in jail for that, it breaks every single protocol. And if they're applying it to someone who ain't done nothing, like they're going to be applying it everywhere. And it is, and when you have legal representation, because Brian tried to put a complaint in against Malik, and he was shut down because they said that Malik was being and it's they just don't feel that they have to even stick to any kind of rules or any kind of protocol. And that's way out of a... And when you've got journalists from a paper that is clearly set... Don't forget, they set Fergie up as well, you know. Same Mazza Mahmood. And then they're getting Andrew to talk about Adrian's out. What the fuck is going on? Yeah? And why is the News of the World... And why is everything being like, no, you can't desecrate people's lives... But they wouldn't be able to do it without police collusion. Tell you that much for nothing. And, you know, it's like I said, but I know that there are good police officers out there. And they're just so compartmentalised. They don't know. I mean, how is this police officer Mahmood using police vehicles? And he's a genuine police officer. Yeah? But that's all it takes. Is to have one officer... of the right rank to pull off a stage thing. All you would need is a dodgy custody suite sergeant, because in the police, you know, it's very regimented chain of command. You're told to do something, you do it because you trust in it, you know. But with a custody sergeant, he has a lot of power. On his say so, because he has to know everybody that's in that custody suite, every police officer that's in that custody suite, if they're from a different station, if they're from... And he can basically reserve a room for a staged event. And no one would know, because normal police officers wouldn't question it. It'd be like, oh, there's an interview going. And it's as simple as that. But this doesn't involve just one high-ranking police officer. This is involving, like, all different... Well, I don't even know who they are, because one's called DC-16. Williams, DC-16. Never heard of police officer DC-16. What's that? How does that identify anybody? It's just, you know, and the other... It's just, so I'm not too sure. Well, it's not a bungle police. This is absolutely blatant. Don't give a fuck, knowing damn well they're never going to be held accountable. That's what all this evidence screams to me, because the solicitor Richard Mallett is obviously gathering. He was holding on to everything. But yeah, but police officers and the CPS taking on evidence that's clearly gone through that's not on. That is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, beyond ridiculous. And taking on evidence that was used to put him in prison and destroyed, like, and not make him see his daughter, like, it's not, and the only person who could have given him some answers is dead. So it's absurd, and it's that. But for somebody who hasn't done anything wrong, it's nah. Because the thing is, like, take away being Brian is just a normal, but he wasn't born to an elite family. He wasn't, but he just got an opportunity, which I think now is it worked. There was definitely something and he can't fathom why. Yeah, he can't, and it's and also as well, I think it's the realization that everybody who's been in his life, they've all been complicit with something. He didn't even want to believe that his friend Reese was involved, but clearly on the transcripts, Reese is saying to Zorba, this is the conversation, have you planned anything yet? And Zorba tells him no. He's waiting for his friend John, who apparently has got a flat. John, who's your friend John? Because if Brian's hiring you as a hitman, this man's conspiracy to it. I'm waiting on my friend John. But Reese never spoke to him again after that. He went all funny with Brian after that. After it all that, he went funny, and then he's dead. And I just want people to try and, like, kind of grasp how this has happened to somebody who's never committed a crime in his life. He smokes weed. And not only that, there's other times when he's had his head chopped, he got macheted in the head in Liverpool. Like, it's just, like I said, a complete and utter blatant disregard for any laws, any boundaries, and it's not even being, because I'll tell you what, that evidence would never have been accepted in a criminal trial, a normal criminal. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Who's to say what was in that in the first place? There was no verification what was in them. It just said a rap. And it's being held, like, do you honestly think they can ever charge someone with intent and supply and possession of something that wasn't even witnessed by police? But yeah, the whole joke, it weren't a joke when he ended up in jail for 56 days. And then got not guilty. So he done the sentence before he was even like, how do you have to do a sentence for an offence that you haven't even committed? And then you get and the thing is, they admit that you didn't do it because you got not guilty, and they lost the evidence. And Kamal Zolber didn't want to turn up as it's like I said, basic human rights, but, like, we let things slide, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And the fact that Richard Mallett and Chris Fay have been done for fraud is just because Brian don't matter. Brian don't matter, but he does. He really does, because he should have basic human, and it's like they don't care because no one is holding them accountable. Yeah, well, the bottom line is there is going to be, I'm telling you now, Yeah, this is going to the IPCC. Every officer who gross misconduct, even by picking up a piece of evidence from a guy's ass. Like, a guy who works for a paper that is known for its corruption. Yeah, so they know that that's not... But none of them wanted to sign the exhibit bag. Why didn't you want to sign the exhibit bag? That's standard procedure, surely. Like, it's the first rule of evidence. And you can't put evidence that's going to convict somebody in an exhibit bag, put it into and not sign and date it. And anybody who thinks otherwise is an idiot. You are meant to sign, date, like it's just beyond. And like I said, it's not like it's a bit of evidence. This is evidence that was used to fucking put him in jail. And then they're not guilty. So he completed a sentence that was given to him, attached to this injunction by a family court judge whose redacted name you can't find. Where's the sense? And like giving the fact, like the family courts are acting outside of their fucking jurisdiction as well. How many people have had their children taken by the family fucking courts? What, they're giving them powers to attach sentences to injunctions that are illegal in the first, because it's no. We all know it's, you know, this kind of fucking law and order's gone out the window, but there has to be something, some sort of it's getting beyond a joke. You know, and I'm not talking about covering shit up. They ain't covering shit up. False paperwork. They're like, it just goes against everything. But anyway, I don't even know. Do you know what? I don't even know how long I've been talking for, right? I was only going to do a 300 minutes. Is that the... Oh, shit. Well, I was only going to do a short one, and I do have lots of other things I want to talk about. But I needed to get this, and I needed to do this first broadcast to know that I've got, you know, everything's... thing. But tomorrow, everything that I've spoken about will be there. So, you know, if anyone has got any ideas, wants to give an, you know, it's not, but if you want to suggest ways where we could, because the police have got to be held accountable for their absolute gross, and also we need to discuss what's going on with the family courts and how they're being able to attach prison sentences to injunctions that has no basis in the first place. Brian's never attacked his wife. Brian's never been done for, you know, he hasn't got a history of violence. There's no violence on his record. Okay, he shouts and screams a lot. He's like, fuck's sake. You can't like put a prison term on an injunction that probably isn't even legit, because to have an injunction there has to be some sort of back domestic violence. Right, and also it's that injunction basically is what the police do when they interfering with a witness. They husband and fucking wife, and there's no history, no history of domestic violence. No matter what the bird was saying, that was uncorroborated. There's no you know what word I mean, evidence, right? There's nothing to make this injunction that has a prison sentence attached to it. And what they got him on, because they couldn't get him on him interfering with a witness because he didn't do nothing. And she got the house that he bought. Yeah, so, you know, he weren't, he would, and they do him because it specifically says if you get anybody else basically to do harm or interfere with witness, you're going jail. And the hitman, Kamel Zorba, I ain't even gonna like, even the name in itself is an absolute joke. But a man who's been paid £15,000, £20,000, confirmed, and it has been confirmed. That's paying somebody to set something. That's blatantly what it is. And you're telling me that they went on the word of this wonderful human being who's took £15,000, £20,000 to go along with this, and his word's enough to put a man in jail. Like, nah. No. It's not on. But anyway, I've got to try and work out how to, I hope it, right, stop recording. So, yeah, I don't even know if I've gone out on live on Facebook. I've just been rabbiting. But, yeah, well, I'll be doing another one very, very soon. And there's other things that I want to bring up because the River Fleet is a bit of a thing for me at the moment because I didn't realise that a lot of people did not know that there was a River Fleet that runs under London. Yeah, it runs under all the way, and it's London's England's largest subterranean river, and it flows all the way down Fleet Street, through Hampstead Heath, and yeah, so there's. But like I said, this is more about like bringing attention to the family involvement, which has never come up before, and I think is so like it's just beyond comprehension that they can do this. So anyway, gonna stop streaming now. So